Welcome to the Neighborhood Law Center. I'm your host, Melvin Burruss, and today we're going to be talking about voter registration and the November 3rd election. Very important date. Put it on your calendar. That's the date to go out and vote. So let's just talk about who you are and what you're going to tell us today. Could you start with Amanda?
Sure, yes. So like Mel was saying, my name's Amanda. I am a community organizer with Virginia Organizing, work in the Central Virginia area. So Virginia Organizing is a statewide, nonpartisan nonprofit. We have about 15 chapters across the state, and we work to bring folks together to work on social justice issues in their communities. Try to bring folks that are directly affected by the issues into the process and get the community involved in making some changes that they want to see. And so Andrea is a part of our emerging Waynesboro area chapter. I'll let her introduce herself.
My name's Andrea Jackson from Waynesboro, Virginia, and I've been volunteering with Virginia Organizing on and off for 10 years. I've been worked with many social justice issues and different campaigns that they've had. Also, as of now, I've been working with Amanda with the voter registration and getting out the vote and letting people know about registering to vote.
Okay, so how long have you been with Virginia Organizing?
I've been on staff since spring of this year, but I've been with the organization in some capacity since last spring of 2019.
And what were you doing before that?
Before that, I was finishing up my master's degree, and I was doing my practicum placement with Virginia Organizing.
Let's talk about the new voting legislation that's just been passed.
Sure.
To leave a base on what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, of course. So in the winter, the General Assembly passed some new, very critical pieces of legislation that pertain to the election. So the first piece that we'll talk about is that individuals now can vote 45 days prior to the election without an excuse. So from September 18th to October 31st, folks can go to their local registrar's office and vote early in person if they want to try and avoid the crowds on election day. And they don't have to have an excuse to do that now. The second piece is that if folks are no longer required to show a photo ID when they vote, so the acceptable IDs have been expanded, so people can show something like a utility bill or something without a photo, hoping to expand access to the polls with that. The third is that Election Day is now a state holiday. Again, hoping to get more people out to the polls and give more people access to that right. The fourth is that people who access services with the DMV are able to register to vote online because their information will be on file. So they're eligible to register to vote online, which is a pretty simple process. There's now an expanded absentee voting timeline. So now as long as absentee ballots are received, or as long as absentee ballots are postmarked by 7 p.m. on Election Day, they have up until noon on that Friday, I think it's the 6th, to be received, and they'll still be counted. So giving people a little more flexibility to get their absentee ballots in if they choose to vote that way. So there's a couple other pieces I'll touch on. There's now tracking codes on absentee ballots, so people can follow that through their computer. And there's also no longer a witness requirement for absentee ballots, which was really, really great to see. In the special session, there was a bill passed that allocated some money to the Department of Elections to provide prepaid postage for absentee ballots so people won't have to pay to send in their ballot. And that bill also made some procedural changes, so there's now going to be drop-off what are they called?
Drop-off stations.
Drop-off
Yeah.
boxes, yeah, so people can hand deliver their absentee ballot. And there's also something called a cure process. So if people have their ballots sent in by October 31st, and there's a technical error on their ballot, they'll have the opportunity to correct that now. Whereas before, those ballots might have been invalid and not counted, people will have the opportunity to correct those mistakes.
Okay, let's get into the meat of it.
Sure.
Can you explain how people can register to vote in Virginia? You went over to the new process, but let's tell us.
Sure. So there's a few ways that folks can get registered. You'll complete a voter registration application. It's fairly brief.
Now, are they sending it out to everybody, or you have to request it?
You have to seek this out, so they're not automatically sent to folks. You can access it online at vote.virginia.gov. You can, if you have a DMV ID or license, you will be eligible to, fill out the form directly online, submit it online. But if you don't have that ID, you can still print the form off from that website and fill it out and mail it in to your local registrar.
The important thing is that you have to make an application or request to get this absentee ballot.
Well, you do have to request an absentee ballot, but this is for the voter registration application. So this is just registering to vote,
Oh, register to vote.
which you have to do before you can request the ballot. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, first things first. So.
People can also get a registration application at the DMV or at their local registrar's office. Really getting in touch with their local registrar, they'll be able to help out with a lot of questions that you have, locally.
Okay. Now to register to vote, we know we're registered to vote. Now, what's the next process there? To vote.
To vote, so there's, do you want to take that
Oh,
one,
yeah.
Andrea?
Oh, the different ways to vote. There's several different ways that you can vote here in Virginia. And the first is through the absentee mail ballot. And you can do that by requesting that through your register. You can do that online, or you can go in person to request
And
it.
she gave the address for
Yeah.
the online voting. Where you can register at, you can also request.
And then what will happen is after you request it, since it's past the September the 18th, they can send it to you. If you request it, you can get the prepaid envelope. You could fill it out and mail it back. Or if you wanted to and you don't want to send it through the mail, they have the registers, the drop boxes that Amanda mentioned earlier, and you as the register or as the voter can go to the register or wherever is the designated drop box and just drop it off. And you can do that up until 7 p.m. on November the 3rd. And so then also you could do is early voter absentee, which started in Virginia on September the 18th and goes up to October the 31st. And it's usually Monday through Friday at the local registers or wherever they're designating it in your ward or your city to go and vote. And then the last 2 Saturdays, they're having it from 9 to 5 on the Saturdays before the election.
At the registrar's office?
Yeah, at the registers.
Okay.
Or there might be some satellite locations. It depends on your community.
So you just go to if you need the information, call your register and they will know where to direct you, where you can go to vote.
Yeah, the satellite
Yeah.
locations they're having.
And then the traditional way is you can go to your local ward or precinct on November the 3rd to go and vote in person.
And vote. That's good. Just describe to us what happens when people get a felon convention in Virginia. How can they get the right back to vote restored? Because this is a big issue down in Florida right now.
Yeah, it is. It's
But I think Virginia has been pretty proactive on this.
Yeah, the Secretary of the Commonwealth in Virginia does try to be proactive in restoring people's civic rights when they're eligible. So in Virginia currently, when anyone is convicted of a felony, they automatically lose their civil rights. So that includes the right to vote, to serve on a jury, to run for office, to be a notary, and also to carry a firearm. But this process doesn't restore the right to carry a firearm, but it does restore the previous rights that I mentioned. So to be eligible to have your rights restored, you have to have completed any term of supervision in any terms of your supervised release. You don't have to have all of your fines paid off in order to apply for restoration of rights, but you have to no longer be incarcerated or be under supervision. And I have the website for that too.
Could you?
Yeah, so it's www.restore.virginia.gov, and you'll scroll down to the bottom of that website and you'll see a box that says, check on the status of your rights or request to have your rights restored, and you'll follow the prompts from there.
This is the Neighborhood Law Center. I'm your host, Melvin Burruss, and our guests are Amanda and Andrea, and we're talking about voter registration and the November 3rd election, okay? But during this pandemic, which is kind of stifling a lot of folks, mostly all of us, what are ways that people can do civic engagement work during this period?
Well, it's very hard. It's hard to campaign and it's hard to get out and to engage with people, but it's a must so we can get out to vote. And so a lot of different things you can do at home or through the pandemic is to contact the people on your contact list, the people that are close to you, to make sure that they are actually going out and getting out to vote, because even though you might be engaged, they might not be engaged and they might not know the different dates and the different things. So if you just let the people that you know personally on your contact list, that's your first thing that you can do, and it's a safe thing that you can do. Also, you can contact your different organizations, like Virginia Organizing is one where that is trying to engage people and educate people during this time. And so to see what they're doing, like for instance, a thing that Amanda and I have done and that other people can do is that we've gone out into neighborhoods and put out reminders, door hangers has all the information that says when is the time that you can register, where you can register, what your registered information is, and then when is the election.
Well, all these different parties are basically doing what you're doing, or trying to do what you're doing, or engage people in volunteering and getting the vote out, the Democrats and Republicans. So are you working with these groups, or this is something entirely Virginia Organizing is doing on their own?
Well, because of the nature of Virginia Organized, it's a nonpartisan, so we don't have like Democrat or Republican. It's to educate people as a whole, and we don't discriminate against, to be like, if it's leaning toward Democrat or Republican, it's just a community effort to get as many people out and to be engaged as possible.
Yeah, so we don't coordinate with any particular party or campaign.
Yeah, right, being a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that working with other organizations. I was just wondering, what type of organizations are you working with?
I think that other organizations that are not partisan, like I know that Amanda or in the Shenandoah Valley, we've worked with the Poor People's Campaign and different organizations that are also nonpartisan but are community-based and organized to get out the vote. And
and connecting with other groups to see like if you all can form some kind of joint plan and of course, they're connected to different people than you are, so just spreading the information to as many people as you can and working those networks that you have.
It was like what you did with the Deltas
Yeah.
on the Zoom program.
Exactly.
Where you talked about registering to vote. Have
Right.
you done that with other organizations or different groups, Zoom programs? Because with the fraternities and sororities, there's quite a bit of them around here.
Yeah.
I think you should be reaching out. Well, not I think, but an idea would be reaching out not only to the AKAs, the Alpha Kappa Alphas, but also the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and doing those type of things with them too.
Yeah,
That's
so
another body work.
absolutely. So we've been doing the Zoom voter registration training for 2 months or so now, and having our chapter members and leaders, send it out to other organizations that they're connected with. So I know we've been able to connect with some other folks that way.
Well, that's how you got me.
Yeah.
Omega Psi Phi on the Delta Zoom program. Okay, so let's go on. What I was interested in your social justice issues. What are some of your social justice issues that you're fighting with or you're trying to resolve?
A lot of the issues that we are trying to do are as local or community. We look into the specifics of what's going on in each individual community. I know like different things in the past that they've done is like racial profiling or Social Security or housing. Those are bigger issues. I know they've done predatory lending. Those are issues or campaigns that's been statewide. But then also they've done listening projects where you've gone into different neighborhoods and listened to what's going on in individual communities to get the needs of that individual community.
Okay.
So it varies.
Okay. There's some things I know that we haven't talked about, but you'd like to talk about, not only on the voter registration and voting, but anything else that you have or Virginia organizing is doing.
Well, I would just encourage folks to get in touch with their local organizer. Each of our local chapters is working on something different, and we have chapters working on school to prison pipeline issues and ensuring that there's equity in returning to school, especially during the pandemic. That's
interesting. I'll just bring that out. What are you doing in that area? Because this virtual learning versus in-person learning appears to have quite a hardship on some of these young people. One, some of them doesn't have the computers or the internet yet. And the other thing is the long hours that they're now spending on this virtual learning. So could you address some of that you're doing in those areas?
So, we're working in Waynesboro. Our chapter is still developing, so Andrea and I are not specifically working on those issues yet, but some of our other chapters are. But I know they're trying to connect with parents and students and really hear firsthand what their experiences are, and trying to develop solutions in that capacity. Some of our recent campaign victories, for example, in our Lynchburg chapter, they were working on school to prison pipeline issues prior to the shutdown and the pandemic, but this spring they just recently won their campaigns, and so their first win was that they were working on their school volunteer policy. So before, parents or anyone who had a prior felony conviction was automatically disqualified from volunteering at the school. And through their organizing work in Lynchburg, they're now able to, it's now a case-by-case basis, so people are not automatically disenfranchised because of that prior felony conviction. And
no, that's very important because sometimes the felony is 30 years ago.
Exactly.
And yet you're ostracized or you're not disenfranchised, as you're saying, to work with a student that you may be your child now, or even your grandchild now.
Sure.
That's a great thing you're doing there.
Absolutely, yeah.
what we've been doing is trying to get out in the community and get leaders of different organizations and to bring a coalition together to try to figure out how we can make better change and represent the community.
What would you say to the community or those friends of yours, the contacts, which is very interesting? What would you say to them about getting out to vote or volunteering in general?
I would say that, well, it was a very personal issue for me in Waynesboro, is that we just recently had a local election, and the turnout was very low. And so voter registration and also turnout is very important to me, because if you don't have that, a small percentage of the community or the population dictates what's going on in your community. And a lot of people don't understand this, that your local elections matter just as much as these presidential elections, because this affects your life. So a lot of, for me, I'm a history major, so the civil rights, the different things about how people have fought for our rights to vote, it's not only a civic duty, but it should be an honor and a privilege to do this, because our ancestors have died for this. So it's just more than just like something we should do. It's something that, you know what I'm saying, like, it's important. It's something that we should pass on, you know, as a legacy to our children and our children's children, how, you know, this isn't something that just happened. Like, people have died for this right. So that's what I would impart to people about why it's so important, why we get out here and do this work.
And the other part, which is very interesting, you brought up, is that the local supervisors or local councilmen are the ones that make policy on how your life is lived. And to affect policy or affect change, you got to start from the lowest level, and that is with your supervisors or your county executives. And so it's important that we not only put people in that think and want the same things that we want as for our family and for our children, and thinking about the totality of the community, because what you're saying is if only a certain amount of people are voting from a certain segment, then they'll feel that everything is okay and we can do what we want. But you got to come out, and I hope you're also telling people to go to those different council meetings or county meetings and express your feeling, or at least learn something from them so that you can take back to your contacts, as you're saying. This is what's happening. This is what we need to do to organize to make a change, especially when you're talking about parents who are felons cannot go to school with your kids and do things in the school as a volunteer. That's a real local thing that you need to talk about.
Right.
And then on the state level. But, and you also were very good when you talked about the contacts. I really didn't think about people going to their contacts. We're always talking about, give me a list so I can call. But what about the people that you already know? Make sure you're making that weekly call, a monthly call. All right, well, at the end, could you sum up or let us, our audience, know what you want to leave with our audience?
I think it's just that it's very important to get out and vote. Like I said, for me, it is about, it's your civic duty. I hate if you complain, then you should also, you don't have a right to complain if you don't get out and vote. And that it is our duty to get as many people out as possible.
Yeah, and I think just going beyond trying to get people registered, but making sure that they have a voting plan and they know what's on their ballot, helping people feel prepared for the election and for the voting process, and bringing more people into the civic engagement work.
Okay. Thank you for watching. This is the Neighborhood Law Center. Here's the website you can go to see not only this show, but other shows that we have done. Also, you can go to YouTube. I would like for you to also tell your community to go out and vote, and to stand up, speak up, and make sure you vote on November 3rd. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Andrea, for being a part of this, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Peace and God bless.